Welcome back, Algebra. I'm so excited that we're actually going to get started with newer content. We're going to talk a lot about absolute value. So what I need for you to do is to get comfy, get your supplies. Know that today you're going to do more of an exploration. It's okay if you make mistakes. Fix them as you go. When we get into the solving, I will show you too, but only at the end of the video. I really would like for you guys to read and interact what's in this video, like on the screen. Take some notes, really kind of explore and have this understanding based on what's presented to you. Hopefully this will make our lives easier to understand later on as we're dealing with these. So I would like for you to answer these three questions. You need to answer what is absolute value actually is. What does the symbol look like that we use for absolute value? And then explain in writing what the meaning of the absolute value is. And when you explain this in writing, what I really would like to make sure that you do in your language is to be able to explain it to a 5-year-old who's just learning to count to 100. So that 5-year-old doesn't have a whole lot of math terms. So you need to understand that absolute value is abstract. A 5-year-old can't understand that. So you're going to write it in a way that a 5-year-old can understand. Pause the video, make sure you get that done, and then we'll move on. Okay, the whole purpose of today's video is to learn how to solve absolute value equations. Again, we're going to explore a lot, so you're going to find some errors, and that's absolutely okay. And then you're going to, interesting how I said fill in a table and graph to notice any patterns. We're not doing that. Don't worry about that extension. That's not actually part of what we're doing. But you're going to have these explorations, and then you're going to do some practice problems. Here we go. There seems to be a lot of words on this slide. What I would like for you to do is pause the video and really read it. Read what the definition is. Come up with that catchphrase. Remember, something that you can say that makes it really easy for you to remember, much like we've done in class before last semester. But take a moment, come up with that catchphrase, and then when you're done with the definition and the catchphrase, then move on to that mathematical rule and answering what it says, and then predicting why you think you need to do it this way. So pause the video, really take your time and explore this, interact with it, come up with your notes, and then you can move on. The catchphrase that I really like to use is absolute value is absolutely positive. For me, that reminds me that no matter what, it has to be a positive number in the end. So we're going to continue this exploration. And you can see that there are pictures and guidelines for how to solve absolute value equations. What needs to happen in order to solve them? And if you look closely, you can see that you need to isolate the absolute value symbol and all the stuff in it first. You're then going to set one to be positive, one to be negative. You're going to solve, and then you're going to do a check. So what I want you to do is, again, you're going to pause this video. You're going to explain in writing how to solve absolute values. Now, not just the equation that's given to you. How would you genuinely solve any of absolute value equations given your way? You're going to write it in a way that you can use it as a guide to do your practice here in just a moment. So again, pause the video, take as much time as you need, write some really detailed notes, and explain how you solve absolute value equations. Okay, we're going to take a moment and do these two examples together. So if you need to pause the video and stay caught up, if I'm talking too fast and you need to slow me down, you can always stop the video, rewind, and hit play again. Do what you need to do to be comfortable and really understand this, because I'm going to go pretty fast. You notice that in the center of the screen, I went ahead and copied those 3 step-by-steps for how you need to solve an absolute value equation. So in example 1, the first thing we need to do is isolate the absolute value symbols. And you can notice that we have this 5, we have this -8, all before we have that absolute value symbol. So they're attached to that absolute value symbol, and I need to get rid of that first. I'm going to start farthest away from those absolute value symbols. So I'm going to start with that +5. The opposite of adding 5 is subtracting 5. So that means I need to subtract 5 on both sides of the equation. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite what's left. -8 times the absolute value of -2n equals -75 minus 5. We have 75 bad people, 5 more bad people. We have -80 as our simplification. Okay, again, I still need to get rid of this -8 in front because it is attached to the absolute value symbols. That means multiply. So I'm going to divide by -8 on both sides and rewrite what's left. We have the absolute value of -2n equals a -80 divided by -8 is +10. And now I'm going to move on to step 2. I'm going to move on to step 2. That means I'm going to set this up without the absolute value signs into 2 different equations. So I'm going to have -2n equals +10. That's exactly the same as it was before. I just took away the absolute value sign. The second equation that I'm going to set up is I'm going to have that -2n. So what was inside the absolute value, I'm leaving alone. But now I'm going to make it be equal to -10. So I've made it so it's equal to a positive value of it and a negative value of it. And now I need to actually solve. So n is -5 because 10 divided by -2 is -5. And n could also be +5. Again, -10 divided by -2 is +5. So we have these solutions of -5 and 5. And we group those solutions by putting little squigglies around them. It's really that symbol that looks like this, but that's always hard to draw for me, so I just like to put the squigglies. Then I'm going to square it off so that I know that it's right. The last step that we need to do is to do a check. When you do a check, you're going to substitute it into the original. So that means I'm going to have 5 minus 8 times -2 times -5 equals -75. I'm going to simplify all of this and make sure it's correct. So I'm going to have what simplify inside the absolute value first. So I have 5 minus 8 times the absolute value of 10 equals -75. The absolute value of 10 is 10, so I have 5 minus 8 times 10 equals -75. And then I'm just going to talk about the rest. I end up with 5 minus 80 equals -75, and that's true. I'm only going to show you this one example to check. You need to make sure that you check both. When you do your practice, you're going to check both answers to make sure they're correct. All right, take a moment, pause the video, see if you understand everything that's happening, rewind if you need to, have this figured out. I'm also going to have you try and attempt example 2 on your own. So pause the video, attempt example 2 on your own, and we'll get back together here in a few seconds. As you can see, I rewrote the equation. I then divided both sides by -5 because that's the thing that's attached to the absolute value symbols, and I need to isolate those absolute value symbols. I then am left with the absolute value of 3 plus 4k equals +23. Negative divided by negative is positive. This is where you split it off into 2 different equations. I'm going to have 3 plus 4k equals positive 23. And I'm going to have 3 plus 4k equals negative 23. And again, what was inside that absolute value stayed exactly the same. I didn't change anything with that. The only thing I changed was that 23. I either made it positive or one that's negative. So now I'm going to do a two-step equation in order to solve for k. Subtract 3 from both sides. I have 4k equals 26. Nope, 20, because I can add correctly. 23 minus 3 is 20. There it is. K equals 5. Beautiful. I'm going to subtract 3 again. This is where I wanted to do that 26. Negative 23 minus 3 is negative 26. I'm going to have k equals negative 26 over 4, except that I can't write. I'm going to say it correctly, but not write it correctly. I need to simplify my fraction, so I have k equals negative 13 over 2. Is it okay that I actually have an answer that's a fraction? Is that something that we can do? Absolutely. Fractions are just numbers, and fractions are our friends. Just because we ended in a messy number doesn't mean that it's not a true equation. So our answer solution is negative 13 over 2 and a positive 5. The last thing you're going to need to do with this is to check both answers to make sure they're correct. And remember, when you're checking, you're going to plug into the original. I'm only going to check one, and I'm going to check the crazy fraction one because I know that's the one that would freak you all out because it's a fraction. So I'm going to have negative 5 times the absolute value of 3 plus 4 times negative 13 over 2 equals negative 115. All right, we're going to do order of operations and simplify in that absolute value first. So I'm going to have negative 5 times the absolute value of 3 minus, what do I have here? That can simplify. So minus 26 equals negative 115. All right, I now have negative 5 times positive 3 minus 26 is negative 23 equals negative 115. An absolute value of negative 23 is actually positive 23. So I have 5 times 23. Negative 5 times 23 is negative 115. And that, in fact, is true. So even though it was a scary fraction, order of operations and taking your time and organizing will prove if you got it correct or not. Again, I only checked that negative 13 over 2. It's your job to check the second answer to make sure that what you did is correct. All right, with all of that, we're going to go ahead and end this video. In your assignments, you have 6 more practice problems that you need to work through. I will not provide you an answer key. You need to actually do the checking mathematically to see if your answers are correct. Good luck, algebra. Attend the Zoom meetings if you have any questions. Bye for now.